There is no doubt in the world scientific community that this is a direct result of human activity and that the effects of climate change will become astronomically worse in the future. Our planet cannot be saved unless we leave fossil fuels in the ground where they belong. Now think about the shame that each of us will carry when our children and grandchildren look back and realize that we had the means of stopping this devastation, but simply lack the political will to do so.
For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear.
A story you will see nowhere else this morning. It's about one of the biggest crises we face, climate change, and a media war over that crisis. Climate deniers, people who believe climate change is not happening in any meaningful way, are sometimes painted in the media as fringe characters, as kooks. So this might shock you. A man who co-founded the Weather Channel thinks climate change is a hoax. His name is John Coleman.
It's nice to be on CNN. Hello to all your viewers. I resent you calling me a denier. That is a word meant to put me down. I'm a skeptic about climate change, and I want to make it darn clear, Mr. Kenny's not a scientist. I am. He's the CEO of the Weather Channel now. I was the founder of the Weather Channel, not the co-founder.
Yep. And I'm glad you did, because I am addicted to the Weather Channel. I watch a lot of cable news.
Now, hold on just a minute. I'm not done. And CNN has taken a very strong position on global warming that it is a consensus. Well, there is no consensus in science. Science isn't a vote. Science is about facts.
Yep.
And if you get down to the hard, cold facts, there's no question about it. Climate change is not happening. There is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there's no reason to expect any in the future. There's a whole lot of baloney, and yes, it has become a big political point of the Democratic Party and part of their platform, and I regret it's become political instead of scientific, but the science is on my side.
I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion about the topic right here. What I do wonder, though, is when you see...
I know we're not, because you wouldn't allow it to happen on CNN.
Nope.
But I'm happy that I got on the air and got a chance to talk to your viewers. Hello, everybody. There is no global warming.
What I do wonder is when you see the government, when you see NASA, when you see other institutions say that 97% of climate scientists agree, do you think they're making it up? What I don't understand is how you square that.
Well, that's a manipulated figure, and let me explain it to you. The government puts out about $2.5 billion directly for climate research every year. It only gives that money to scientists who will produce scientific results that support the global warming hypothesis of the Democrat Party position.
Yep.
So they don't have any choice. If you're going to get the money, you got to support their position. Therefore, 97% of the scientific reports published support global warming. Why? Because those are the ones the government pays for, and that's where the money is.
Correct.
It's real simple. But that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't make it true. That only makes it bought and paid for. The money goes in circles.
I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to try to refute you on the facts.
That's the truth.
I'll simply say that the vast majority...
Please stand back from this issue and let the two sides be on the air. There are 31,000 scientists who have signed a petition that says it is not valid, that my position is correct.
Yep.
And we'll keep battling, and we will prevail in time, but I don't know if we'll do it in my lifetime.
I do hope viewers are Googling the data you're sharing, because I do think it's skewed. I have to say that. I want to ask you about the weather.
No, it's not true, and I hope you will go to the websites that present the papers that show that none of this alarmism about ice and heat waves and drought, none of it is happening.
For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight. You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
Greta, you suffer from Asperger's syndrome, and you said once, it helped me to get focused on the climate topic. But you also said, actually, I'm very shy.
Ironically, there was a study that came out of Carnegie Mellon University in 2015, which showed that meatless diets are actually far worse for the environment than the regular meat-filled diets. They increase emissions, they increase energy use, they increase water use. But none of that matters because the climate hysteria movement is not about science. If it were about science, it would be led by scientists rather than by politicians and a mentally ill Swedish child who is being exploited by her parents and by the international left. So what you're seeing here is a political movement and a religious movement, and it's fulfilling religious and political goals of the left, but it isn't doing very much for science.
Chris, you had a visceral reaction to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you're a grown man and you're attacking a child. Shame on you. She's trying to do what she thinks is right. And by the way, now relax, skinny boy. I got this, okay? You're attacking a child. You're a grown man. Have some couth.
I'm not. I'm attacking the left for exploiting a mentally ill child.
Maybe on your podcast, you get away and say whatever you want because nobody's listening. You're on national television. Be a grown-up when you're talking about children. She's trying to save the planet because your president doesn't believe in climate change, and kids need to take to the streets to worry about their future. You are despicable for talking to her about her like that, and you should apologize on national television right now.
I think the international left and her parents who are exploiting a girl with many mental illnesses.
You called her mentally ill. Take it back now.
She is mentally ill. Take it back now. She is mentally ill. She has autism. She has obsessive compulsive disorder. She has selective mutism. She had depression.
You are despicable.
Her mother wrote about this in a book. You can inveigh all you want, but unfortunately you don't have any facts on your side.
You're despicable. You're a grown-up. Be a grown-up.
Let's change gears a little bit here.
I have such contempt for all the adults who made this girl cry with their global warming lies. Like the UN Secretary General, who met and encouraged Thunberg, and himself yesterday got up on that stage so full of himself to tell bizarre untruths.
Nature is angry, and we fool ourselves if we think we can fool nature. Because nature always strikes back. And around the world, nature is striking back with fury. In May, I went to the island nation of Tuvalu, where I witnessed an entire country fighting for its very existence against the rising seas.
Lies, lies, and lies. In fact, an Auckland University study of Tuvalu found that over the past 4 decades, 3/4 of Tuvalu's islands actually grew. The total land area increased 3% nearly. And around the Pacific is exactly the same story. 43% of islands growing, another 43% of them stable. They're not drowning, they're growing.
Oh, this is a sad story. Arctic tour ship. 16 climate change warriors aboard got stuck in ice. How often does this happen to these people that go down to South America looking for evidence of global warming, climate change? They get stuck in ice, and a fossil fuel-driven icebreaker has to go rescue them. Maritime.net reports that an Arctic tour ship carrying a climate change documentary film team and several tourists ran into some ice last week. They've been shooting a documentary about climate change and melting Arctic ice. I'm not kidding you. The MS Malmo, Swedish-flagged ship cruising off Longyearbyen Svalbard archipelago, halfway between Norway and the North Pole when it got stuck in ice. 16 passengers had to be airlifted to safety using fossil fuel aircraft under challenging conditions. According to Maritime.net, 7 crew members remained aboard the ship as they awaited assistance from the Coast Guard, also powered by fossil fuel ships.
Halfway between Norway and the North Pole. But how did it get stuck? There's not supposed to be any ice up there. Al Gore and the Democrats told everybody that there would be no ice anywhere on this planet after 2012, right? That was the whole point of that inconvenient truth climate propaganda movie that they still pump into our schools these days, by the way. Well, big surprise, they're wrong about that. No, there's tons of ice, because it keeps happening. Haven't we heard of something like this before? Oh yeah, I wrote about this 5.5 years ago.
The United States is sending this heavy icebreaker to help free a Russian ship and a Chinese icebreaker gripped by Antarctic ice. The American help was requested by Australian authorities as well as from the Russian and Chinese governments. This Chinese icebreaker helped rescue passengers from the Russian ship stranded in ice, then found itself stuck on Friday. The Russian ship was the first to become trapped 100 nautical miles from the French Antarctic station south of Tasmania. Passengers on the Russian ship amused themselves for 8 days with yoga, learning languages, and knot-tying classes. They rang in the new year with dinner and singing songs and stomped a rescue helicopter landing space into the snow and ice. The rescued passengers are all safe and well, but the Russians are waiting for the Americans to rescue them.
Here we are, up against climate change, a bunch of people scared to death of fossil fuels which have improved the quality of life, the length of life, lifespan, the standard of living. They have enabled us to even better clean up the messes that we make, the environmental messes. Fossil fuels revolutionized the human experience on Earth in every which way you can imagine. Now they are painted as evil, destructive, the end of the habitability of the planet. It's absurd, it's ridiculous, it's embarrassingly dumb. We wasted billions of dollars chasing climate change rainbows, but
you're going to hear politicians promise that they want to help save the environment. It's their #1 issue. But when it comes to actually saving the environment or saving the planet, politicians and government bureaucrats are probably the worst people to do that. Look at the EPA. Just a few hours from here in Durango, about 3 years ago, the EPA spilled 1 million gallons of waste into the Animas River. Totally, it was an environmental disaster. This is the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, who did this. And think about how they handle the money, right? Look at Germany and how they have an energy crisis because they tried to switch away from fossil fuels and all of that and just use green energy, solar and wind. But then when the winter came around, they realized the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, and energy costs in Germany went way up. And then look at America, under the Obama administration with a company like Solyndra that spent $500 million on research for solar power and went bankrupt and did nothing, right? This is what happens when you let government officials handle the environment.
When the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight.